Hello, everyone. I'm Pea, and I'm a developer at GDS. You might have attended a pair programming workshop at Codebar with me in March. So today I will tell you a bit about myself. Then I will talk a bit about the place I work at, GDS. And then we will talk about test-driven development and do a little coding exercise together to put what we have learned into practice. And finally, after that, there will be time for Q&A. There will be quite a lot of time for Q&A. So if you have any questions, just jot them down and we will answer them towards the end. So first of all, as I said, I'm Pea and I'm developer at GDS. I went into coding 5 years ago. And probably like many of you, I didn't do the standard route into coding. I didn't go to uni to study coding. I actually studied English literature. And for a while, I was like coordinating projects and doing translations. Then I did art for some time. I even had an exhibition. And then I decided it's time for something else. And a friend told me about Makers Academy. And I tried coding and I thought, wow, I love it. My brain is working hard. I love that feeling. And I went to Makers and I loved it there so much, even though it was intense. And then I got a job at GDS, which I like so much. I'm here 5 years on. So currently I'm on a team called GovUK Notify. And our mission is to help public bodies send SMS, emails, and letters. So like to contact their users easily and efficiently. Before we start, I want to give you a quick overview of who GDS are and what we do. So GDS was set up in 2011 and is part of the Cabinet Office. We have hubs in London, Bristol, and Manchester. But for example, I'm based in Bournemouth and I only come to London hub semi-regularly. So we're very flexible, actually. GDS exists to make interacting with government better for citizens and to make government more efficient and user-focused by using digital tools, techniques, and ways of working. We do this through things like GovUK and government as a platform. Government as a platform, or GAP, as we call it, is our set of centrally built common tools for government. They stop teams wasting time, effort, and money reinventing the wheel. For example, government doesn't need 45 different ways to take or make payments with citizens. It just needs one really good one, which is what we've built. It's called GovUK Pay, and it's processed billions of transactions in the last year alone. Similarly, with the team I'm working on, GovUK Notify. As I said, we help public bodies send messages to citizens easily and efficiently. And we're like this one centralized tool that all the public bodies can use and sign up to. And GovUK, of course, is the single and trusted online destination for government information and services. It's one of the top 10 most used websites in the UK. And in our time so far, we've achieved some pretty remarkable stuff. But still, in the last 10 years, we have achieved a lot, but a lot has changed too. Unlike 10 years ago, people expect government services to be available at the touch of a button 24/7, and for these services to be quick, simple, and digital. We are working on how we can deliver a simple, joined up, and personalized experience of government for everyone to meet those needs. The end goal is to make it clearer and faster for users to interact with government, and for government to deliver better services by being able to better anticipate what users need. So in GovUK Notify, we are making this easier by improving communication between public bodies and the users, and for being able also for the users to communicate back at the public body. So for example, we put for the services to be able to use our email service, they need to set up a reply to email address that's actually working, so the users can get back to them. And for SMS, we enable like a feature which is called like reply to text message, so the users can reply to the text message they get from public bodies. And finally, life at GDS. So I think GDS is a great place to work. It's somewhere you can be yourself, learn from some incredible and passionate colleagues, and work on platforms, products, and services that genuinely make a difference to millions of people every day. That's one of the like main reasons I really like GDS, is that you can really make a difference, and the people are so great. I feel so lucky to work with so many lovely people, talented and dedicated. We support people to bring their whole selves to work, and have over 30 staff-led diversity and social networks, such as the Social Mobility Network, the Women's Network, the Race, Ethnicity, and Cultural Heritage Network, a Neurodiversity Network, LGBT Network, Mental Health Network. These spaces are very valuable, so we can talk about issues relevant to us in a safe environment. We can organize like information campaigns and events, and increase the visibility of certain issues in our workplace and beyond. And we even have like lots of clubs, like a chocolate club. There is something for everyone. GDS's network and social clubs are a great way for colleagues to connect and socialize, especially throughout the pandemic. I'm a part of quite a few clubs and networks myself, like Neurodiversity Network, LGBT Network, or Women's Network. I'm also leading GDS's own meditation club. We meet up every day after lunch to meditate together for 10 minutes. It's great. So we're hiring. We've got some great roles coming up. Check out our careers site at gdscareers.gov.uk, where you can see our current openings. If you'd like to be contacted by us about roles that match your experience and skills, you can share your details with us. The link to the contact form has been shared in the chat. And also at GDS, we are big on software craftsmanship, and test-driven development is a part of that. So the workshop that we are about to have now is very on brand. So now for the main part, watch that scope, or on test-driven development. Let's start. So what is test-driven development, or TDD? I will be calling it TDD from now on, so it's a bit shorter, but what I will mean is test-driven development, okay? So let's start with some questions. Like write in chat, like yes or no. Who has ever written a test for their code in their life? Are you writing? And yes, amazing. So I see you, you already like know how to write tests. That's great. And who usually writes tests for their code? If you don't write it, writing no is also fine. But if you, devs do, amazing. Yeah, that's a really good practice to do it. And who writes the tests first before you write the code? Does anybody do this already? Nice. So yeah. All right, thanks for like honesty. Those of you who already write the tests first already do test-driven development, because that's what it is in its essence, is writing the test first before you write the code. So it's about formulating the question first. TDD is about formulating the question first and then answering it. And when you start, and it's when you start from writing a test, and then and only then write code needed to make that test pass. It's this red-green refactor cycle that you see in the slide. So you first write a test, then you run the test, you let it fail, see if the error message you get is as expected, and only then you write the code to make the test pass. After you went through this cycle a few times, it might be time to refactor the code and see if the tests still pass. So we refactor usually to avoid repetition, to make maybe some like a smarter solution if we see some patterns. And why is TDD a good idea? So it helps you scope what your code needs to do and to avoid rabbit holes and bloated code base. So often when we start with writing the code first, we write like what we think we need, but we actually might not need all those things. And it's sometimes also easy to go into a rabbit hole. And if you write a test first, you only write a code that answers this test. Also, TDD helps us make sure that all our code has good test coverage. This is important because it means when future changes or dependency updates break something, you will know straight away. Tests also provide additional documentation for your code, showing what it does. Having a good test coverage makes your code base easier to understand and more pleasant to work on. Last but not least, it can be really satisfying when you write your code first and then write the tests. Test writing can feel a bit like a slog. When you do it the other way around, you get this burst of satisfaction each time you make the test pass. And how do I develop using TDD? First, write down what your code should do. You could write it down like as a list. So try to break it down into steps. Then each of those steps might become a test, should become a test, one at a time. So you write a test, you answer the test with code that will make the test pass before you write the next test. After each red-green cycle, so test failing and then writing code and test passing, see if there is anything to refactor. Also, do you use Git? For those of you who don't, Git is a version control system, and it helps us work with our code in a more organized way and to get back to an earlier version of the code if we need to. With Git, each time you commit your code, it's like a game save you can go back to. And you can even write a useful message to see later why you made certain changes. It's even more useful when you start writing code as a team. Anyway, it is useful to make a commit each time after you make the test pass and each time after you refactor. This will give you more freedom later, and granular commits like that are easy to take in when seeing what changes have been made to the code, for example, during code review. And you can always squash the commits together later if you feel so inclined. So let's do it. Let's try solving a coding kata using test-driven development. We will solve Fizzbuzz as it's relatively simple and it will not distract us away from our process. When I was learning to code at Makers Academy, we solved Fizzbuzz many times, paying attention to different aspects of software craftsmanship. We call this way of learning a coding dojo. Feel free to solve Fizzbuzz yourself using TDD in the language of your choice. Or if you prefer, you can watch me do it. I will use Python and I will talk you through the process. And sometimes I will ask you questions. Here are the rules of Fizzbuzz. I will give you a minute to read through them. We will try and solve this coding kata in a test-driven way. First test we will do is around the second paragraph. When a number is a multiple of 3, print fizz instead of the number. All right, let's do this. Here is my empty slate. And I will have to first import, I will make like a very empty function. So like I will define Fizzbuzz and I will just say pass, which is saying like don't do anything, but don't break. And here I will from Fizzbuzz text bigger, of course, I will make text bigger. Okay, and now I will write my first test. So it will be test Fizzbuzz returns Fizz when passed number 3. And so we assert that Fizzbuzz, when it's past 3, it returns Fizz. So what's the simplest way, like ridiculously simple, that we can fix it? First, actually, let's run the test. Let's see it fail. Ah, okay, of course. I don't give it a number, yeah. And here we see we get known, but we wanted Fizz. So the simplest and quite silly way to fix that is to just make it return Fizz. Will it pass? It passes, but it doesn't do what we want it to do, right? So why? So let's say when it shouldn't pass with this. For example, when we pass it a 4, right? So I will make another test and returns the number, and it should be like this. When we pass it 4, we get 4. So how do we do this? So I would say if number equals 3, then return Fizz, else return 4. Will this work? I think it will work. I did forget. You're right. You're very right. Thank you so much. Let's make the test fail. Thank you. You see, you grasp this thing better than I do. Thank you. And it fails because we passed 4, but we still get Fizz. So now we get this, return 4, and let's see. Thank you so much, Arman. So we have the Fizzbuzz passing, but it still doesn't do what we wanted to do, right? So maybe we need like a few more numbers divisible by 3. Let's do it as like Parametrize. Do you know about Parametrize? It's fun. I have to import PyTest library, and then I can write at pytest.mark.parametrize, and then I can say that I want to have a number as an argument, and I want to pass it 3 and 6 and maybe even 12. And test Fizzbuzz returns Fizz when passed number divisible by 3. Yeah. So here we will say we need to pass this number, which is one of those. And it will also go here. The question is, are TDD and unit testing the same thing or different approaches? They are connected because when you write TDD, you first write like a very granular unit tests, and then you write the answer to them. Unit testing it does so. TDD writes unit tests, but in a test first way, and but sometimes it also writes even more granular than unit tests in TDD, and later maybe you might want to kind of like make tests a bit less granular at the end during the refactor phase. But unit testing doesn't have to be done into TDD way. Some people first write the code and then write their test, and those are still unit tests, but they are not TDD, if that makes sense. Anyway, let's go back to the workshop. Here is to the task at hand. So now we have parameterized this test. So it's like 3 tests in one, right? For 3 cases. let's see if it passes. I think it will not pass. Do you think the same? Yeah, it got like 6 and 12, and it returned 4. Haha. Oh, actually, I should return number here. Here, if we want to, wait, let's do this later. So now let's make those tests pass. So how do I check if the number is actually divisible by 3? I make it with modulo. So if number is modulo by 3 is 0, so if we have no reminder of like dividing by 3, then return Fizz. Otherwise, return the number. Let's see. Yeah, this works. And already, if we were committing, we could commit this a few times. So I will make like an example commit. I actually should have done several commits by now. So I will do git add, git commit. I could say Fizzbuzz returns Fizz for numbers divisible by 3. Yeah, amazing. And now here is also like can we refactor this a bit? So here it only like returns 4, but what if we did like a little parametrize here and set like 4, but also 7 and also 13? All those are not divisible. So when pass number not divisible by 3. And let's see. Here we have to also pass number. And here. And we should get the number. And let's see what happens to this test now. And it's red for some reason. Number. Oh. Yeah, cool. Sorry. PyTest, yeah. So this failed because here I put like a magic number instead of using this one, right? So now it should pass. Amazing. So you see, like additional tests help me avoid mistakes and like bad quality code. So what do you think? What should be our next test case? Any ideas? You can write your in the chat. Next is to commit. That's right, Arman. But also like the buzz. Yes. So we'll commit, git add. Yep, and git commit and refactor for numbers not divisible by 3. Okay, and you are all right, like Jay and Michał. We will now write a test case for numbers not divisible, for numbers divisible by 5. Oh, no worries. Yeah, git add p is really cool because then you can see like the difference, and it makes it easier to avoid committing something you don't want to commit, because maybe sometimes you made you typed something by mistake, or you forgot about some code that was just temporary, like maybe pseudocode you made to kind of just imagine something. And when you write git add p, like I just did, you will see the diff. Anyway, we will do it on the next commit too. Thanks, Armand, for like pointing out things. You're making my workshop even better. Thank you. So let's test that Fizzbuzz returns buzz when past 5. So Fizzbuzz pass 5 to it, and we assert that it will return buzz. Let's see if this passes. Nope, because right now it returns 5 and we wanted to return bus. So what's the simplest thing we can do here? We can do else if number equals 5. Again, I'm being silly on purpose to just do the smallest thing I need to do to make this test pass. I return bus. Will it pass? It passes. Does it do what we wanted to do? It doesn't, right? So let's make Parametrize again. Other languages, other like test libraries for other languages often also have their own like versions of Parametrize. I know for sure that Ruby does. So if you're interested in those kind of composite tests, then I'm sure you can integrate them in your testing in most languages that you work on. So when number divisible by 5, and I'm passing it number, and here number, and let's see. It fails. That's actually what we expected. Wait a sec, yeah. And how do we fix it? We fix it by doing what we did here with modulo, right? So we did the same for 5. Should we see if it passes now? Yes, everything passes. So might be time for another commit. So if you want to learn more about git add p, watch now. I do the git add p, and I get like the little like granular granular piece of code to commit, and I can say, do I want to commit it or not? And yes, I want to commit it. And the same for the test. Yes, I want to commit that. And now I can just do git commit with the message inline, and I would say Fizzbuzz returns buzz for numbers divisible by 5. Now we have one more like a part of our Fizzbuzz to solve. Do you know what those are? What would be our next test case? Yep, Jonathan and Jay got it right, and Laura and Florian, well done. We're testing for Fizzbuzz now. So we are saying if we test that Fizzbuzz returns Fizzbuzz when passed, for now 15. So we assert that Fizzbuzz when it's past 15, it will return Fizzbuzz. Let's see. PyTest. And no, it doesn't return Fizzbuzz. So we will have to make that condition first. Yes, they do test each other. That's true. So because if we put like our next test case here, sorry, it looks like catwalks on my keyboard, but that's actually me. So if the number was 15, return Fizzbuzz. This wouldn't work because I will show you. This will not work because it will catch one of the earlier conditions. So we have to put this one at the very start. So this becomes if, and this becomes else if. Now I think this will work. Yeah, everything works. But again, our code doesn't do what we want yet. So we need a better test. So what will be our numbers? 15, 30, and 45, for example. And here we do divisible by, and we pass the number. And here we pass our parameterized number. and let's see if this passes. I think it will not pass yet. Yeah, doesn't catch all the cases. So we need to use the modulo again. Now I think it will pass. Beautiful. So what do we do now? We had a red, we had green. Now we commit. So I will add again, see if I didn't add anything unnecessary. Perfect. I will commit. There should be a refactor to do with the test name. Okay. Anyway, git commit. Fizzbuzz returns Fizzbuzz when past number divisible by 15. Okay, but you are right, like for one, when past divisible by 3, not divisible by 3, divisible by 5, divisible by 15. I feel, do you see any scope for refactors? I don't see any, but maybe you, no worries. Yeah, so normally we would also check every so on to see if we can refactor our code. So refactoring means like we don't change how the code works, we don't change the outputs, but we we make the code, for example, more dry, we avoid repetition, we might encapsulate some methods. So we kind of change the innards of our code, so it's better written, but the outputs remain the same. With Fizzbuzz, it's such a simple kata that I don't think we need to do it. So I think our Fizzbuzz is now complete. So how? Tell me, how did you find it? Did you try to write your own Fizzbuzz? Did you follow my Fizzbuzz? What are your thoughts? Like write in the chat, or even if anyone wants to come off mute and speak up, that's also fine.
Hey.
I will give you, hey Kimberly.
So yeah, if you've got any questions, please drop them in the chat. I know there were a few asked, but you answered those during the session. So yeah, if you've got any questions around what we've just done, Fizzbuzz, TDD, GDS, jobs at GDS, hiring, interview process, anything, then yeah, please do drop them in the chat.
Or just being a developer, that's fine too.
Oh, here you go. So first question, how does TDD work with other types of testing?
So what are the types of testing we have? We have TDD, we have unit testing, we have integration testing, we have behavior-driven development too. So usually the tests you write as TDD are like a unit test, or a bit like more granular but similar to unit tests. So while you're writing TDD, you're already usually writing your unit test for your code base. At GDS, where I worked, we usually first started like with this TDD approach and writing unit testing. And when we had our like flow build, we would write integration tests. But I know in some companies, they actually first would write like in a bit of a TDD approach, they would write integration tests instead. So they would write a test for a like bit of behavior. So for example, that when I click a button, I go to the page, and on this page I see this and this and this. And then they would only like create that bit of user journey. And then they write another test and then create that bit of user journey. So I would say like TDD approach can be used both with unit testing and integration testing, but most commonly I think it's used with unit testing. Yeah, that's how it works with other types of tests. And sometimes also, it's worth mentioning, sometimes when you have like a gritty problem to solve, you would first do a spike, where you first would write like a code, maybe it's like a library integration or something, and you would write it even without a test, just to check if it works. But then you actually like comment out all that code, and you start doing it TDD way, like proper way, to have it written cleanly. And then you only like write it like to answer particular test cases.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We've got a few more questions coming in. So the next question is TDD mandated at GDS, or does it vary between teams?
So it varies between teams. Not all teams do TDD. It's recommended, but you don't have to do it that way. But having full test coverage is like pretty like standard. So at GDS, we test our code like extensively. We have lots of automated tests.
Perfect. Thank you very much. On the codebar website, we use something called Coveralls, which checks how much test coverage we've got. And I think the codebar website is on 89%. So we're not doing bad, but we could be better. Next question is, what if my development is UI heavy? Am I right in thinking that TDD is convenient for backend development only?
So I don't think it's only convenient for backend development. If you will look into our notifies repo called, like, I will show it to you. If you will look at our repo called admin, notifications admin. This is our like kind of front-end repo for our like GovUK notify page. And we still have like full test coverage. I will paste it here. So we still have lots of unit tests. But if your thing is UI heavy, you might want to use your TDD with integration tests instead of unit tests. So you first write like a bit, as I said before, a bit of user journey test, and then like answer this like with bit of behavior. I hope let me know if that helps.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Next question. Do you have one developer write the tests and another write the solution?
Oh, that's a great question. And it's something that I forgot to mention, but I meant to mention. Test-driven development, TDD, goes very well with pair programming. And in pair programming, that's exactly how it works. One developer will write a test. Then they will pass the driving to another development because we have driver and navigator in pair programming. So like first, like one person will be the driver and they will write the test. Then the other person in the pairs becomes the driver, solves that test, and then writes the next test. And then the first person who wrote first test solves the second test. And this way you can kind of pass on to each other, and it makes for a really nice, pleasant rhythm. And yes, that's usually how we do it at GDS when we pair. And at GDS, some teams pair most of the time, some teams pair some of the time. Like my team at GovUK Notify only pairs some of the time, but I know, for example, on GovUK on Verify or digital identity team, they pair most of the time.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Next question is, what are the differences between BDD, behavior-driven development, and TDD, so test-driven development?
So you have caught me out here a little bit. But from what I understand, but please go on the Google and read up on it a little bit just to check if I'm right. But behavior-driven development is like you would, as I said, you would like first write those like integration tests where you would have like integration tests with like a bit of behavior. And often it's even like, for example, in Ruby, you can write like the integration test like sentences. So they're even accessible to write to like designers or product managers. So they could write the tests and then you kind of answer those tests one by one. And in classic test-driven development is more about unit tests, but I think they're interrelated in a way.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We've had quite a few questions come in, so we won't take any more just so that we can get the rest answered. So the next one is, how do you use TDD in a bigger scope? Quote, to write a test, one would need to know what is the thing supposed to do, which is oftentimes really hard for UI code, where even a single button can explode to hundreds of cases.
So usually what is helpful is having stories, like so you make like story about a bit of behavior. For example, as a user, to be able to use this service securely, I should be able to log in, and that's one story, right? And then you write on this story, and you, for example, write in points what this user needs to log in. So you will say they will need to go into login page and be able to write their email and password, and they will have to be able to click login. And when this happens, we should check their like login and password and maybe take them to two-factor authentication page. And you write all this like in points, and then each point would be one of your test cases, and you just would go through all of them one by one and write a test, solve it, write a test, solve it. Hope this helps.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Next question is, someone said that they remember the first time they tried TDD, they got stuck. I think it was because I started testing the implementation detail and had to write a lot of tests each time I added a new feature. I assume I misunderstood the granular testing part at first. Did you come across this issue when starting with TDD? At least for me, it took a while to understand what I did wrong.
I understand how it's possible. I don't remember like what I came across when I first started doing TDD because it was 5 years ago, but I was lucky. I had some support from Makers Academy, and I was doing it in pairs because at Makers you do all the like tasks in pairs, which are like changing every day. At least that's how it was 5 years ago. But I can totally see how it's possible that you might go to granular. I think to help with that, again, it's helpful to like first like break, for example, down your epic. So what your whole web page should do into like stories. So each feature, like I said, like as a user to be able to perform this task, I want to do this. I need this, right? And then you have all those user needs. And then this story, this user need, you can break down into little bits, and those bits will become your test cases.
Perfect, thank you. You mentioned pair programming, and someone has asked, do you find you learn more when you're pair programming?
Yes, definitely. I learn more when I do pair programming because then I learn from another person. I also learn how to better communicate my thoughts. I learn better communication and working with someone, and I learn from that person. So their techniques, their working style, their way of thinking. So you can learn so much in pair programming, but at the same time, it's worth remembering that it can be pretty intense, and it's totally fine if you can't pair program all the time. It's totally fine if you also need this time on your own to just kind of get stuck in the code, you know, because basically it's okay to need some integration time.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, next question. Someone said, does TDD work across all types of code bases, or do you think it works better with a certain type of code?
I think it works well with all kinds of code bases. So even if right now we worked on a really simple code, like a kata, which doesn't have many libraries, doesn't have much API integrations and stuff. But even if you have those, it's still easy to TDD. You just do more mocking. And if you look, for example, at Notify's code base, so I sent you API, but I can send you also. So I sent you admin, but I can send you also our backend, which is API. You will see we also have like big unit test coverage, and all those tests. I won't say they were all written TDD because not everybody in our team works in TDD way, but they are possible to write test first.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Next question: is it normal to have more tests than actual code?
I think it's pretty normal to have like a similar amount, or like per line it might be a bit more because you need all the fixtures and mocks and stuff, right? So it might be a bit more lines of tests than lines of code. And sometimes you will find you will even spend more time writing the tests than writing the code. It might seem like too much, like an overkill, but actually in the long term, you're doing yourself a huge favor. First, because you have a nice test coverage. So in the future, like half a year from writing your code, you might totally forget what you have written half a year ago or a year ago or 3 years ago, you know? And later when you want to change something, extend your code, it's really easy to forget why you wrote that way before. And it's easy to break something, for example, edge cases. But if you have test coverage, they will catch that. So for this reason, it's really, really good to have like a good test coverage. And also if someone else works on your code, it will be easier for them. First, they will be able to read through the tests and then they will see by reading through the test what the code does. And second, if they break something, the test will tell them.
I think you're very generous by saying 3 years. I think I can go back to code after a month and forget what it does.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm the same.
So next question is, do you think about TDD when discussing new features during sprint planning, backlog refinement sessions? And for those that are maybe not aware of what sprint planning is, it's when you allocate time to discuss what needs doing over a certain amount of period. Some companies work in sprints of a week or 2 weeks or a month. And so it's essentially planning what you're doing during a certain time period. And so, yeah, do you think about TDD when discussing tasks?
Don't think about it at this time. It's just like kind of, I don't know, obvious that tests will have to be written as part of writing the code, and only when I start working, I pick up. So at the sprint planning, it's more like we think which pieces of which stories we will work on. And only then when I look at the story, I kind of jot down point by point what will be my test cases, because then I it's easier to concentrate, I wrote this test case, this one is next to go, this one is next to go, and it really helps to have this written down, especially if you work throughout several days, because I don't know about you, but sometimes after a weekend when I come to my work, I'm like, what I was even doing. But when I have a nice list, it's like, oh, okay, I was here and I wrote those test cases, and this one is the next one. Perfect,
Perfect. Next and final question is, do you recommend testing is done even if there is no testing element being done in the firm?
I don't understand this question.
I think it means in the company,
do you recommend?
Yeah, so do you recommend testing even if maybe none has been done before in the code base?
Well, it's always good to start. As the saying goes, the best time to plant a tree is 15 years ago. The next best time is now. So it would be better if your company started testing before, but if they haven't, it's great. It's still great to test now, even if there is no prior test coverage. Then at least you will start adding it and as slowly as the code base is getting extended and improved, you will get more and more of this test coverage. And then maybe at some point, people will see how it's useful, and maybe they will make a Firebreak project to add more tests to the past code base.
Perfect. Thank you so much, P, for coming along today and running this session. We've managed to answer all the questions, which is amazing. A huge thank you, P, a huge thank you, GDS, for today, and a huge thank you, everyone else, for coming along as well.
Thank you so much for listening in. I'm happy we did this together.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks.